Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into some ancient lost teachings that offer a pretty radical path for humanity, not just to worship the divine, but to actually become it. Yep, we're diving into the mysterious world of Hermes Trismegistus, the thrice greatest. Okay, so let's jump right in, because we have to start with a mystery that has stumped people for centuries. Was Hermes a real person, a god, or, something else entirely? The historical record is all over the place, giving us two completely different ideas of who this figure was.
So, on one hand, you have some ancient sources that say he was a real Egyptian sage who lived even before Moses. But then on the other hand, a lot of scholars think he was more of a Greek philosophical invention, created much, much later. This whole debate has turned him into this legendary, almost mythical figure, totally shrouded in the mists of time.
To really get a handle on his teachings, we've got to start where he did, with this huge cosmic vision. And this wasn't some kind of philosophical argument he came up with. It was a direct revelation about what reality truly is. In what's probably his most famous work, the Corpus Hermeticum, Hermes tells this story about receiving a vision from this immense divine being called Poemandres. And this being doesn't say, "I'm a god with a name." No, it says it's the actual mind of God, the supreme power itself. And here's what's so wild about this idea of God. It's not a deity like we usually think of, sitting on a throne somewhere. It's described as this absolute, single, self-existing essence, the source from which everything flows, the creator and sustainer of it all. So, after introducing itself, Poemandres lays out the entire story of creation for Hermes. And it's not a one-and-done event. It's more like a multi-stage cosmic birth, this unfolding of the divine into the world we know. The whole thing happens in this really beautiful sequence. First, there's a vision of pure, endless light. Then, from that light, a holy word comes down. This word acts like a creative spark, separating the elements, causing pure fire to burst out, and finally creating 7 planetary rulers. And this right here, this is a huge concept in Hermeticism. Our physical world, according to this, is governed by these 7 celestial powers, the planets, and their influence, their management of the material world, is what we experience as fate. Okay, so if that's the cosmic setup, where do we fit in all this? Well, according to these texts, humanity's place is totally unique and full of conflict. The Hermetic texts basically define us as a walking paradox. Man is made in God's image, right? A divine and immortal animal. But we're made of 2 completely different natures, the immortal spirit and the mortal physical body. And they don't pull any punches when describing this conflict. The language is, wow, incredibly intense. The body isn't seen as a temple at all. It's called a prison, a living death, a sentient corpse, and even a tomb that the divine soul is forced to drag around with it. So you see what's happening here. It's this massive inner battle. On one side, you've got the divine soul, which comes from God's light and life. And on the other, you have the mortal body, born from darkness and matter, which is just left to wander around and, as the texts say, suffer the things of death. So if the problem is a divine soul trapped in a mortal prison, what's the solution? Well, Hermeticism doesn't just say pray for salvation. It gives you a direct, hands-on path to freedom. It's called regeneration. The key here isn't blind belief, it's gnosis. That's a Greek word for knowledge. But we're not talking about book smarts. This is a direct, intuitive knowing. The texts are super clear about this. This knowledge of God is the only thing that can actually save you. Now, this path, it's a serious spiritual workout. You start by rejecting the body's desires. You have to mortify the flesh. Then, the soul has to get rid of 12 major vices tied to the material world, things like ignorance and greed. You replace those with 10 key virtues. And only after all that purification can the soul rise up past the 7 spheres of fate into this final transcendent place called the Ogdoad. So why go through all that? What's the end game? Well, it's huge. It is nothing less than apotheosis, the act of becoming a god yourself. The goal is to leave mortality behind, become part of God's actual essence, and finally reunite with the One. And this brings us to what is maybe the most radical, most mind-blowing idea in all of the Hermetic teachings, this profound, almost shocking connection between humans and the divine. This isn't about worshiping a faraway God. It's about becoming that God. And that really leaves us with a final, thought-provoking question, doesn't it? This ancient philosophy completely challenges one of the biggest assumptions in a lot of religions. It asks us to think, what if true liberation doesn't come from believing in something outside of us, but from a deep transformative understanding of our own divine nature? What if the whole point of being human is the journey to become a mortal God?